Good day everyone, I am Jamari Timunan Datolio, a second-year BS Ed English student of Negros Oriental State University, Shatan Campus. And for today's video, we are going to tackle my assigned topic, which is about Unit 2 of Learner-Centered Psychological Principles under Individual Differences Factors. So, there are three individual differences factors. The first one is individual differences in learning. The second one is learning and diversity. And the third one is standards and assessment. So we are now on individual differences in learning. Learners have different strategies, approaches, and capabilities for learning that are a function of prior experiences and heredity from EPA 1997. So, in a classroom, we could see how students would use different strategies in making activity that the teacher gave. So, as a teacher, you have to accept and respect it because, as we said, it is based on their background, or their performances are based on their backgrounds and hereditary. So it means that whatever they have learned at home, or whatever strategies they learn from their parents, those strategies or approaches are basically what they used into the learning process in school. Next, diversity is a natural part of life. Yes, we are in a diverse world, and we could say that we are a unique creation of God. Everyone has really having differences, and we are diverse, or we have differences in our lives, is what I've said earlier. Next, each learner has his or her learning style, intelligence, potential, skills, talents, learning preferences, as well as cognitive abilities, which are effects of both experiences and hereditary. So, for instance, you have a student from a family of doctors, teachers, or from a family of professionals. You could see them and how they act and how they approach into a certain situations. And compared to a student from a simple living, you could also see them as how they act into a certain situation. So, we could see our students and how they perform, and basically those performances based on how they experience at home or based on their social interactions. Next, current trends in teaching encourage teachers to apply concepts in multicultural teaching, differentiated instruction or DI, and the universal design for learning, which is the UDL. So in a classroom, it is possible that we have students from different places, like Luzon or from Mindanao. So for example, their cultures and beliefs or traditions are different from what we experience here in the Visayas. And sometimes, we have also different languages. So, we mentioned differentiated instruction and universal design for learning so that the learners could relate even if there are differences that we could see. So, as a teacher, you must use examples or scenarios inside the classroom that everyone could relate. And lastly, as a teacher, you should not stick into one. You have to touch all your students or know them well. So we are down to the second factor, which is learning and diversity. Learning is most effective when differences on learners' linguistic, cultural, and social backgrounds are taken into account from EPA 1997. So since we are in a diverse world, we have to take into account or put into consideration the diverse that we have, the language, the culture, the backgrounds of learners. So basically, language can be a barrier in learning when learners cannot express themselves well, or if it is they cannot relate to what they have, or if it is not related to their social context. So for example, in a classroom, you gave an example from other country, and you cannot assure that all your students know or have watched the news about it. So they will possibly not get what you're talking about, or they could not put themselves into that certain situation. So you need to contextualize or localize the cases or situations. Or cases and situations are localized or contextualized. If using situation outside the country, make sure all the learners could get the point or can relate to the situation. Example, if you are presenting a literary pieces that are different from what we have here in the Philippines, so they could not get the lesson from that certain situation. So as a teacher, you have to contextualize or localize even if they are from other countries, or relate that into the perspectives that we have here in the Philippines. And an inclusive classroom is one that welcomes and respects differences which are incorporated into their learning activities. So, learners should be part of it or relate to each other and relate to what the teacher is talking about and can understand to the learners or the discussion being discussed. So again, because of the diversity, the linguistic or the language, the culture or where the learners came from, and the social backgrounds or how they socialized with their families, classmates, and other people, should be valued, accepted, and respected for them not to feel discriminated, to have a meaningful learning process.
So we are now on the third factor, which is standards and assessment. Setting appropriately high and challenging standards and assessing the learner as well as the learning process, including diagnostic, process, and outcome assessment are integral part of the learning process from EPA 1997. So as a teacher, you're not just to teach, but also you need to evaluate and assess the learners because the results are used to identify the learner's strengths, weaknesses, limitations, and also the difficulties of the learners. Moreover, the teacher would also know the kind of support the learners need based on the results of the assessment. So in a classroom, basically a teacher would give three kinds of assessment. The diagnostic or given before the lesson, the formative, during is to assess the learner's improvement, and summative given after the discussion. And it is for the teacher also to know which part that the learner learned and which part they have struggled or the learner would not able to understand. And next is assessment should be an ongoing process. So, assessment should be an ongoing process, as we have mentioned that basically in the classroom, the teacher would give the diagnostic, formative, and summative test to monitor the progress and to identify the barriers that learners have in achieving their goals. And lastly, assessment is for both teachers and learners. It is both for teachers and learners because through it, learners would know their weaknesses and strengths, and for the teachers to improve the strategies and techniques in delivering the lesson to have meaningful learning process.